Okay, part two of my confused ramblings about Father Ted. Okay, I'll go into some observations about the character development. As I was saying in part one, the first series stands out as being underdeveloped compared to the second two. You see very, very little of Mrs. Doyle. I think Jack is a little bit too articulate. I mean, it might be because I'm sort of used to the Jack that appears in series 2 and 3, as much as the first series, and he just seems to be talking a bit too much. But then by the third series, he's kind of fading out. I don't know if it's just the sort of limitations of a character with a sort of single figure number of words in his vocabulary, or if maybe Frank Kelly had some other commitments or something, but sort of appears less and less as time goes on. But we do see more and more of Mrs. Doyle, which is always good. As I was saying, she's not really present in the first series. She appears briefly, serves some tea, occasionally makes a big hash of serving tea, and disappears. And then the priests get on with their adventure. I'm not even really sure why she appeared in the first series, to be honest. She adds very little, but as time goes on, she starts having more and more sort of stories of her own, and she becomes quite a strong character, actually. I think part of the appeal is that she's essentially this sort of very stereotypical old Irish Catholic woman, but it's that image is sort of constantly being subverted. Like in one, she becomes a football fan. In one episode, she gets arrested for fighting with a friend in a tea shop. She starts off being, sort of someone's grandma, but then it's twisted. It's twisted. She ends up being something completely different. I think that's most of her humour, really. It's that sort of constant, unexpected, sort of twisting of the stock character. She does sort of have a capacity to be a bit mischievous as well. When they get a tea machine, and she's very jealous of the tea machine because she's the only tea machine around here. So she goes and sneaks downstairs in the night and sabotages the tea machine. This idea that she's got this kind of suppressed sense of fun. And I get the impression, I get a general impression as well that she has some sort of dark secret. There's one point she just sort of mentions her husband and then sort of covers her mouth and goes, "Oh, I've said too much." Is that sort of a hint that she murdered her husband? I don't know. I mean, she does sort of talk about how much she's so completely disgusted by the thought of sex as well. And I wonder, is that some sort of hint as well that she murdered a husband or maybe did a bobbit on him or something? I don't know. And we on to Ted. Now, Ted I found actually a lot more interesting this time round than I ever had before. I've always just sort of thought of him as like a straight man, but he's not. He's another sort of stock comedy character. He's the kind of hubristic, dissatisfied, angsty sort of character. Much like sort of Tony Hancock or Oliver Hardy, always sort of feeling that they're born to better things and they're sort of stuck in this shithole. Very, very often being embarrassed. I mean, a lot of the humour comes from Ted being embarrassed, or failing in some way. I think maybe I kind of relate to him to a certain extent, now that I'm a parent myself, because he has this sort of responsible role in the house. It's sort of in. If you imagine they represent a family, you've kind of got Ted as the dad, who's looking after sort of Dougal, who's like a child, very childlike, and Jack, who's a baby, really. I mean, we've actually started calling my nearly 1-year-old father Jack, because she sort of sits in a chair making loud demands and committing random acts of violence until you give her a bottle and she falls asleep. And yeah, I've kind of connected more with Ted this time round. I mean, I suppose I mean, obviously the show is named after him, so it's obviously about him. So I don't know. It was just the least interesting one to me, I think, because he seems a normal guy. But yeah, he does definitely have a character, and he's a comedy character. But I think as well, as well as being sort of quite self-aggrandising, he does also have quite a caring side as well, which makes the character more three-dimensional and gives the show some warmth, sort of wholesomeness, like the way he's sort of quite patient with Jack and Dougal. As I say, he sort of plays a parental, responsible role. And it's kind of the only one in the house who really takes any responsibility. But I suppose Mrs. Doyle's is responsible for making the tea. Yeah, he's a character who's sort of not quite as clever as he thinks he is. Kind of because he's a big fish in a small pond. I think really all three of the priests at least are sort of different products of this bizarre artificial life they're leading, where they're sort of given a lot of respect for not really doing a lot and everything's provided for them. And we have Ted, who's sort of quite angsty. Got a lot of first world emotional issues going on. Thinking life should be better than this. but always kind of falling short of any sort of success or achievement. And then there's Dougal, who's sort of very sheltered, quite helpless, naive, and Jack, who's just completely selfish, and quite cruel with it as well. Really looks down on everybody else. But there is a bit of kind of bare knuckle humour around Jack as well. I mean, the show itself, when you sort of compare it to some of the things they've been on since, so it looks quite tame now. But yeah, it is about Catholic priests, and it's made by people who are at least culturally Catholic. And so it is kind of within their lane to nod to the sort of child abuse issues that have been in the news a lot. Well, not just lately. I mean, way back in 1995, obviously. There's a lot of discussion of child abuse by Catholic priests, and we see in Jack's flashbacks, but he did used to be a teacher. He used to beat kids with sticks and perv on teenage girls and things. He's not in any way a sympathetic, likable character. He has no redeeming features whatsoever. I suppose it makes you less sorry for him that he's now a sort of alcoholic with dementia. Even so, if you sit and think about what you're actually laughing at, with regards to Jack, it does sort of verge into the problematic. It's it's one of those things, you just have to not really think about it too hard, or you'll go a bit mad. I mean, to some extent, Dougal as well. I mean, as I say, he's obviously one of us, and I seem to be the only person who really understands Dougal, including the the writers and and anyone who's ever written some sort of character description of him just says that he's like an idiot. He was dropped on his head as a child. He's he lives in his own little world and things like. Oh right, so he's autistic then, yeah. I mean, I actually got dropped all the way down a whole flight of stairs when I was a baby, but. Well, there was some sort of relevance to that sentence when I started it, but I think I realised by the end that actually there wasn't. I think what everyone misses about Dougal is just how sort of shy and awkward he is. I mean, he has a sort of generally good-natured disposition, and 80% of the time he's quite optimistic, I suppose. Has a sort of capacity to get up to some mischief. But he is a very, very introverted character. I mean, he has Ted, he's a safe person who he'll just natter to all day. And he's not particularly scared of Mrs. Doyle and Jack, but, you take him out of that sort of comfort zone, a wild new person has appeared and he's completely lost. He spends most of his time very, very confused. I don't think he's quite so carefree as everyone else seems to think. And he's certainly the character that I've always related to. You know, the one that I've thought was, you know, the one that was saying what we're all thinking in a way. And I've turned out, and no, he was just saying what I was thinking. I think the elephant in the room as well, when you're talking about Dougal, is that Ardal O'Hanlon, you know, his representative on Earth, is just mind-meltingly cute. No, it's just way cuter than any adult human really has any right to be. I mean, it's sort of cuteness levels of kittens and chicks and things. And how much is, you know, the sort of popularity of the character just down to his, you know, little pinchable cheekies? I mean, I think he has the capacity to be, you know, to be seen as being sort of very annoying and needy, very quite self-absorbed. But I think because he's just got this adorable little face, I think you can sort of forgive him that. I mean, if you imagine actually having to live with him, no, I think it'd probably get old fairly quickly. Yes, it's just lucky he's so cute, let's say. And again, if you imagine actually having to live with Jack, you know, if you take it seriously, it becomes quite sad, really. I mean, even Ted, you know, even though he's supposed to be like the normal one, he's if you imagine you actually knew somebody like Father Ted, you'd you know, you'd sort of see him come in and think, oh God, that twat again. Edgeway. But of course, he is the only person on the whole of Craggy Island who has his head screwed on in any particular way. Who's sort of fairly reasonable minded and takes some responsibility a lot of the time. So he is valuable. He is very valuable. In that particular universe. What was I going to say? And I think the sort of political themes of the show are sort of worth a look as well. I mean, it's not deeply satirical, but of course everything has, you know, some. I mean, even if it's unintentionally, you know, it has some sort of political viewpoint. Even if it's you know, that politics is stupid. If it does have some sort of political aura around it, it's you know, kind of satire on the hypocrisy and contradiction in religion. Not necessarily Catholicism, often just religion generally. Which, you know, so it seems fairly worthy. And I just sort of think, I could have done a little bit more with it. I mean, as I say, the show's fairly tame. I think we could have maybe gone for the jugular a bit more. But maybe they just didn't want to piss anybody off. I mean, I don't know how. I don't know what the situation really is in Ireland these days with the whole Catholic Church thing. Apparently, there's sort of one of these apocryphal stories from the filming of one episode when they were out and about, and Ardal O'Hanlon went out to buy a pair of shoes in between takes, in his outfit, priest outfit, and the shopkeeper actually offered them free. He thought, the priest will put a word in for me in heaven, or maybe it's just because he's really, really cute. I don't know. So that kind of thing does still go on. The priest sort of being immune to any kind of criticism or hardship reserved for us mere mortals. There are also stories sort of filtering through of, hate crimes against priests, because it's sort of seen as being child abusers. I don't know how well received it was. I think I'll talk for a minute about how it's dated, how it's aged. I mean, obviously it's 28 years old this year. I mean, that's getting on a bit for a TV series. And yeah, it's you still see it being used in reaction GIFs and things online, and you still the people using slogans from it, like "down with this sort of thing" and "feck." People saying feck. No, nobody said feck before Father Ted was a thing. I mean, I don't know if it was like an Irish word, but yeah, people still say feck. I remember once one of my friends was just talking about how outdated my mobile phone was, and I just turned to her and said, "I love my brick." And I just sometimes I just come out with something like that that's just so quick and witty. I just wonder what the hell I'm playing out the rest of the time, And how is it dated? Right, I think there's a lot of cosmetic stuff. That my kids won't necessarily consider normal everyday objects. What am I talking about? If say I showed it to my children, in a couple of years when they're a bit older, they're not going to recognise some of the props as being modern technology. Like the really big clunky mobile phones and the video player and things. And there's mentions of celebrities that are has-beens now, and the cars look very angular. It's but I mean those things are sort of easy enough to explain away. It's in the past. I can imagine they just right, okay, it's when Mummy was a little girl in the olden days. These things were perfectly normal. I think the only things that are really going to take a lot of explanation, well, there's definitely 2, maybe 3 things. I mean, the one that I'm not sure about, how sympathetic are people to Catholic priests these days? Do we still sort of see them generally as characters that are likeable enough to kind of warm to, enough to enjoy a sitcom? I mean, obviously we we still as a society enjoy Father Ted because they're the sort of Ted Dougal and Jack. They're familiar characters that have been part of our culture for a long time. But if something, if a new viewer came to it now, would the sort of image of the priesthood be sort of tainted by recent news stories to the point that they don't really want to get involved with these characters? I'm asking the question. I don't actually know the answer. The other one is the last episode where they go to America. Of course, in the 20th century, America was like the centre of the universe, and anything American was, glamorous and futuristic and wonderful. But it's very quickly gone downhill in, the sort of international opinion. They just sort of all, it's just an automatic assumption that, wow, we're going to America, that's fantastic. And that doesn't stand up anymore, no. No, I don't think people are desperate to dash off to America these days. Even if they can, with all visas and what have you. And the other one is the wallpaper. Oh, the wallpaper in Father Ted is absolutely, I love the wallpaper, right? Of course, in 1995, that was sort of really naff, dingy, disgusting, old-fashioned wallpaper. What was big in the 90s was, well, the really sort of high-end haute couture of interior design was minimalism. But of course, what people actually lived with in their homes was sort of 50 Shades of Beige. Maybe you'd have a bit of a pastel motif on it, or a faint stripe or something. No, it wasn't great. Yeah, it was so bland. It's like you're not even supposed to look at your walls. So yeah, that kind of really lovely vivid colours and things, it was supposed to be sort of representative of a place that's quite down at heel. The modern world has not quite reached us here. But of course, nowadays, maximalism is the thing. The whole world has finally caught up with me. And all those lovely patterns and textures and colours are big now. So, their house would just be like the trendiest place on earth. So I think it's just odd how things have come around like that. And of course, they listen to records as well, which was not really a big thing in the 90s. Records had their day, but now of course they're back in. All the music buffs will have their albums on vinyl now. It's like Father Ted sort of predicted life in the 2020s in a way. We haven't had a resurgence of tank tops yet, but I think that's maybe that's the next big thing. Priest clothes. That's something that the series has made me think about as well. It's like what do they actually wear when they're not working? We sort of see them in the. I don't know all the proper names of the vestments. We do see. I do see them getting into their, the big green ponchos and the trailing scarves and things when they're going to do mass once or twice. But most of the time they wear the sort of black suit and the white collar. I mean, do with their own woolens as well. I mean, is that how priests actually dress when they're off duty? And Jack in particular, you see him wearing that sort of long dress, with all the little buttons on. He wears one of those a few now and then. Is that sort of day wear for priests? I don't know. Do they never wear their own clothes apart from a jumper or a cardie or something? Is that a priest thing? Apparently, Ted's got these two little badges on his jacket. One is supposed to say that he's a teetotaler, though several times throughout the series he's seen drinking alcohol, and one's supposed to say that he speaks Gaelic, even though he's never actually shown speaking Gaelic. It's just, it's all those little inconsistencies. But you think, oh, they must be there for a reason. Why would the wardrobe people actually go to the effort of getting these badges if, they're just sort of stuck on there for no reason? And Dougal's got sort of a little pin as well that I don't know the meaning of, but I don't know the meaning of that. I think, oh God, we've gone on for half an hour. Yeah, I'm going to stop. I'm just going to stop. Abrupt ending. Maybe there'll be a part 3 if anything else comes to me that might be relevant. But yes, I'll see you in the next one.